The Great Hall of Theron Prime was the largest room Admiral Unipark had ever seen. The ceiling went up so high that she could see clouds forming inside the building. The walls were made of crystal that glowed with soft light. All around her, sitting in curved seats that went up and up like a giant bowl, were creatures from 47 different worlds. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some were made of pure light. All of them were looking at the small group of humans standing in the center, while Una kept her back straight and her face calm. She had spent her whole life getting ready for this day. Beside her stood Dr. Tai-Ho Kim, a man who had spent 30 years learning alien languages. His job was to tell her what the aliens were saying about humanity. The words he whispered were not kind at all. The High Arbiter came down from his high seat. He was a strange being, made of energy that glowed inside a body of silver metal. When he spoke, the words did not come from a mouth. They appeared directly in the minds of everyone in the room. "Humanity of Earth," the Arbiter said, "we have been watching you for 300 of your years. We have seen your machines. We have read your history. We have studied your nature. Now we must tell you what we have decided." Una felt Tai-Ho grab her arm. They both knew this moment would come. The early reports had not given them hope. "You are a species of war," the Arbiter continued. "In the time we watched you, you killed more of your own kind than many species create in 1,000 lifetimes. You learned to break atoms and used that power to burn whole cities. You made your own world sick with poison. Even now, reaching for the stars, you still fight among yourselves." The room filled with sounds of agreement. Creatures of every shape and size were nodding, clicking, and changing colors to show they agreed with the Arbiter. Also, the Arbiter said, "You grow too fast. Your machines get better faster than your wisdom grows. In only 300 years, you went from simple tools to ships that fly faster than light. This is not normal. This is not safe. This cannot be allowed." Una stepped forward. "May I speak?" The Arbiter stopped. It was rare for species being judged to ask such things. But there was something in this human woman's eyes that made him curious. "You may speak." "We do not say our history is clean," Una said. Her voice was clear and strong, reaching every part of the huge room. "We have made war. We have done terrible things. But we have also made peace. We have also learned from our mistakes. Each generation of humans is better than the one before. Is that not what growth means?" The aliens were surprised. Species being judged usually cried and begged for forgiveness. They did not argue. "Your growth is exactly the problem," the Arbiter replied. "You change too fast. You learn too quickly. The Concord has kept peace for 10,000 years by making sure all species grow at the same slow speed. You will not slow down. You will not take your place below the older species." "What place is that?" Una asked. "A lower place," the Arbiter said simply. "All young species must serve the older ones. This is how peace is kept. But your people will not serve. Your diplomats argue with us. Your scientists question our knowledge. Your soldiers do not know how to bow." Una smiled just a little. "You are right. We are not good at bowing." The Arbiter's energy flickered with something that might have been anger. "Then you give us no choice. The Galactic Concord finds humanity guilty of being unstable, violent, and growing too fast. Your punishment is exile. You will be sent to the outer void, past the edge of the galaxy. You will have no contact with Concord space. You will receive no help, no supplies, no trade. You will live or die alone, far from all other species." The room exploded with happy sounds. Lights flashed everywhere. The aliens celebrated because the dangerous young species would not bother them anymore. Tai-Ho grabbed Una's arm again. "Admiral, we must fight this. We must appeal. There has to be something we can do." "No," Una said quietly. "There is nothing to say. These beings made their choice before we arrived. They were afraid of us before they met us." She looked up at the Arbiter and bowed her head just a little. "We accept your judgment." The room went silent. This was not what they expected. "But," Una added, lifting her head to look straight at the Arbiter, "you will remember this day. All of you will remember what you did here. And someday, you will understand what a terrible mistake you have made." She turned and walked out of the room. Taiho hurried after her. The aliens watched them go, confused by how calm the human seemed. Did she not understand? The outer void was death. No species had ever lived there for more than 100 years. The humans were finished. 3 days later, Yuna stood next to President Jinho Lee as he spoke to all of humanity. The message went out to every human world, every ship, every station. 7 billion people watched and listened. "They have thrown us out," President Lee said. His voice was calm but heavy with the weight of what had happened. "The Galactic Concord has decided that we are too dangerous to live among them. They are sending us to the outer void, where they think we will slowly die in the darkness between galaxies." He stopped for a moment, letting his words sink in. "They do not understand us. They see our wars and call us violent. They see how fast we grow and call us reckless. They see that we will not bow and call us proud. But they do not see what these things really mean." The president leaned forward, his eyes burning with fire. "We are the species that lived in caves and then flew to our own moon. We are the species that turned dead land into green fields and empty places into great cities. We looked at every impossible thing and said, 'We will find a way.' The void is not our death. It will become our kingdom." Across all the human worlds, people began to understand. This was not an ending. This was a beginning. "Let them watch from their comfortable planets," President Lee continued. "Let them wait for news that we are all dead. They will wait forever, because we are humanity, and we do not know how to give up." That very night, the work began. The building yards on the moon had never been so busy. All day and all night, workers moved through the huge frames of ships that would carry humanity into the unknown. Bright sparks flew in the darkness of space as pieces of metal joined together. Engineers shouted orders through their radios. Giant robots lifted sections bigger than buildings into place. Chief Engineer Sumi Han stood on the watching platform, looking at everything with tired but happy eyes. She had not slept in 3 days. None of them had. There was no time to sleep. The Concorde had given humanity only 1 year to leave known space. 1 year to build enough ships to carry millions of people across distances that would take decades to cross. Everyone said it was impossible, but impossible had never stopped humans before. "The frame of the Defiance is done," her helper told her. "We start building the inside today." Nimi nodded. The Defiance was the first of 5 great ships. Each one was large enough to hold 50,000 people. These were not normal ships. They were like small worlds that could fly. Each ship had factories that could make anything from medicine to weapons. Each ship carried seeds for every plant that humans had ever grown. Each ship held all of human knowledge stored in special crystals. These ships were meant to save humanity. They were meant to help humanity grow again. They were the beginning of a new future. Captain Do-Yan Choi came to the moon station 1 week later. He was 62 years old. His hair was gray, and his face had many lines from years of hard work and hard decisions. He had led the ships that took back Mars when the great dust storms came. He was the first human to hear a message from aliens 30 years ago. Now he would lead humanity into exile. "She is beautiful," Do-Yan said, looking at the Defiance through the window. The ship was many kilometers long, shining with new metal. "How long until she is ready?" 6 months, Sumi replied. "Maybe 5, if we make the workers go faster." "Make them go faster," Do-Yan said. "We do not have extra time." His second in command was a young woman named Yoonji. Yoonji was 31 years old, with sharp eyes and a quiet way about her. Do-Yan had picked her himself, not just because she was skilled, but because she had fire in her heart. That fire burned cold and steady, fed by memories of a day 8 years ago. On that day, Concorde ships had appeared above her home on the colony world of Kepler. They called it quarantine work. They said the human colony was growing too fast, too close to Concorde space. The warning came only minutes before the bombs fell. Yoonji had been on a training ship, coming back from another world. She watched through the window as fire covered the colony. She watched as her mother and father and everyone she loved turned to ash. The Concorde sent a formal apology. They said they were sorry for the sad, but necessary action. They offered to move the survivors to a smaller, more controlled place. Yunji had smiled and accepted the apology. She had waited. She had trained. She had grown stronger. Now she was ready. Before the ships left, she traveled to Earth one last time. The memorial wall stood in the center of New Geneva, a huge structure of black stone that reached toward the sky. The names of everyone killed by the Concorde were carved into its surface. Millions of names, in letters so small you had to stand very close to read them. Yunji found her parents near the left side. Park Min-ho and Kim Ji-soo, beloved parents. Gone too soon. She pressed her hand against the cold stone. "We are leaving," she whispered. "They are sending us away into the darkness where they think we will die. But I want you to know something. We are not running away. We are not giving up. This is just the start." Her hand closed into a fist. "I will make them see what they did. Not with blood, because that would make us like them. But I will make them understand, and they will never forget." She stood there for a long time until the sun went down and the stars came out. Those stars had seemed so full of promise when she was a little girl. Now they seemed like prison walls, marking spaces that humans were not allowed to enter. But past those walls was the outer void, and in the outer void, there were no rules. The exodus started on a cold morning in March. 100 ships lifted off from stations all over the solar system. Their engines burned so bright that people on Earth could see them in the sky. 5 million humans left everything they had ever known. They carried with them the hopes of 7 billion more who would follow in the years to come. Captain Doyun stood on the bridge of the Defiance as his ship passed the outer planets. Behind them, the sun grew smaller and smaller until it was just another star among millions. Ahead of them was nothing but empty black space. "Set our path for the void," he ordered. Lieutenant Yunji entered the numbers. Her hands were steady. Her heart was calm. "Path is set, Captain." Doyan looked at the endless darkness before them. Somewhere out there, the Concorde expected them to die. They expected humanity to fade away quietly, forgotten by everyone. They were wrong. "Start the journey," Doyan said. The Defiance and her sister ships flew faster and faster into the unknown. The greatest movement of people in human history had begun. Behind them, the Concorde watched from their border stations, happy that the problem of humanity was solved. They had no idea what was coming. The outer void was everything the Concorde had said it would be. Cold and empty and dark, going on forever in every direction. The stars were far away here, tiny points of light that gave no warmth. No planets circled around them. No life had ever touched this place. It was the edge of everything, where the galaxy ended and nothing began. The Concorde had sent humanity here to die. They thought the humans would run out of fuel. They thought the humans would run out of food. They thought the humans would lose hope and send sad messages begging for help. Then there would be silence. That was what always happened to species sent to the void. It was only a matter of time. 5 years passed. No sad messages came. Dr. Min Jae-soo floated in his workroom, surrounded by glowing screens that showed information from all over the human settlements. He was trained to change dead planets into living worlds. But there were no planets here to change, so he made a new science instead. He called it the Seedling Way. It started with a simple idea. If there were no planets, humanity would build their own. The first test was small. Mining ships caught a single space rock and brought it back. Workers spent 6 months making it hollow inside. Min-jae and his team filled it with dirt brought from Earth. They planted seeds. They put in lights that acted like the sun. They made the rock spin to create gravity. They pumped in air and water. Within 1 year, plants were growing inside the rock. Within 2 years, the first baby was born there. Now, 15 years after the exile began, humanity controlled 300 homes in space. Some were small, holding only a few thousand people. Others were huge, spinning tubes of steel and glass many kilometers long. New Seoul, the biggest one, held 200,000 people. It had parks and rivers and buildings that reached up to an artificial sky. The Concorde sent spies to watch. The spies could not believe what they saw. Their reports talked about impossible things. The humans were not dying. They were building. They were growing. They were laughing and singing and having babies in the endless dark. Even more worrying were the reports about human machines. Cut off from everyone else, humans had to solve problems in new ways. They found methods to pull energy from empty space itself, taking power from the tiny gaps between atoms. They made building materials that nothing could break. They built machines that created gravity without spinning, something Concord scientists had said could never work. Admiral Unipark was 73 years old now. Her black hair had turned white. Her face showed the years of worry and hard work. But her eyes were still sharp. Her voice still made people listen. She stood on the bridge of the Defiance, now the main ship of a growing human fleet. Through the window, she could see dozens of space homes floating together. Their lights twinkled like jewels in the darkness. Hundreds of ships moved between them, carrying people and supplies and dreams. News from our watchers, her helper said. The Concorde is watching our border more closely. They are worried about how many humans there are now. Eunice smiled a little. Let them worry. They still think we will fall apart someday. Their experts say we cannot keep growing without natural worlds to live on. Their experts think like Concorde species, Una replied. They wait millions of years for planets to form on their own. They dig up rocks that already exist. They cannot imagine making worlds from nothing. She turned to face her helper. We can. We always could. That is what they never understood about us. In Space Home 12, the building yards never stopped working. Something new was taking shape there. Something that had never existed before in human history. It was a warship, but not like any warship ever built. Its outer shell was made of materials that humans had invented in the void. Its weapons used ideas that Concorde science said were impossible. Its engines could push it faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. They called it the UN Cone Quered. Captain Doyen Choi, now 77 years old, watched the ship grow from his home on New Seoul. He had commanded the Defiance for 20 years before giving the job to younger people. But he still followed every new thing that happened. He still read every report. It is time, he told Commander Yoonji during one of her visits. She was a commander now, with gray in her own hair and lines around her eyes. But the fire in her heart had never gone out. The Concorde has forgotten about us. They think we are slowly dying in the darkness. They are about to get a big surprise. Yoonji looked at the glowing picture of the Unconquered. The ship was beautiful and scary at the same time. Are we really going back? Of course we are going back, Doyan said. We never planned to stay here forever. The void was never our home. It was our training place. He reached out and held her hand. His grip was still strong, despite his age. We are humanity. We do not accept exile. We do not accept walls. We do not accept that any part of space is closed to us. Yoonji felt tears in her eyes. After all these years of waiting and working and planning, they were finally ready. Concorde said we were not worthy, Doyan continued. They said we were too dangerous, too wild, too hard to control. They were right. We are all of those things. And now they will see just how dangerous we can be. The Unconquered flew for the first time 6 months later. It was the first of 2,000 warships that would make up the human return fleet, as it flew faster and faster toward the distant light of the galaxy. A message went out to every human home. Admiral Unipark spoke the words that everyone had waited 40 years to hear. We are going home. The border stations of the Galactic Concorde had stood for 8,000 years. They were huge buildings in space, each one home to millions of soldiers and thousands of weapons. Their sensors could see a ship from very far away. Their shields could stop the weapons of whole fleets. Nothing had ever been a real threat to them. Nothing had ever really tried. The workers on Border Station 7 were bored. They had been bored for hundreds of years. Their job was to watch the edge of the outer void and tell someone if any human survivors tried to come back. But nothing ever came from the void. Nothing could live there long enough to reach the border. So, when the warning sounds started screaming, nobody believed them at first. Sensors are broken, the main officer said. Check them, sir. The sensors are working fine. There are ships coming. Many ships? From the void? That cannot be. Sir, I am counting 2,000 ships. They are moving faster than anything we have ever seen. The main officer ran to the big display screen. What he saw made his blood go cold. A wall of ships was coming toward the border. Each one was bigger than any human ship he had ever seen before. They were not hiding. They were not running away. They flew in perfect lines, their lights burning bright enough to see across the whole system. A message request came in. The officer accepted it with shaking hands. Fleet Admiral Yoonji Yoon appeared on the screen. She was 64 years old now. Her hair was all gray. Her face showed the decades she had spent getting ready for this moment. Behind her, the bridge of her main ship hummed with quiet work. "This is the human return fleet," she said. "We are coming into Concord space. We tell you not to fight us." The border station fired all its weapons. Every gun opened up at once, filling space with enough energy to destroy a small moon. The human ships did not slow down. The weapons hit their shields and disappeared without doing anything. The fight lasted less than 1 hour. Human ships moved through the station's weapons like water through sand. Their guns were careful, hitting only engines and weapons, never touching the places where people lived. When the fighting stopped, Border Station 7 could not move or fight, but it was still in one piece. Not one person had died. Admiral Yoonji sent another message, this one going out to the whole Concord. "We are not here for revenge," she said. "We are not here to take over. We are here because this galaxy is our home just as much as yours. You threw us out 40 years ago. You thought we would die? You were wrong." The Concord panicked. Emergency meetings were called. Fleets were sent out. The 47 member species argued about what to do about this impossible problem. Some wanted to talk. Others wanted immediate war. Some simply could not believe what was happening. The humans moved steadily toward Theron Prime, the heart of the Concord. Every defense station they met fell within hours. Every fleet that tried to stop them was turned off without anyone dying. The humans fought with terrible skill and even more terrible kindness. High Arbiter Soren, the same being who had sent humanity away 40 years before, watched the reports with growing fear. He had never thought he would see humans again. He had never imagined they could become this strong. The species he had called dangerous animals had become something far beyond what he could understand. The human fleet arrived at Theron Prime on the same day as the Exile sentence, exactly 40 years later. 2,000 warships took positions around the Crystal World. Their weapons were ready, but quiet. A single small ship went down to the surface, carrying Admiral Yoonji and a small group of guards. The assembly of voices was in chaos when she walked in. Beings from 47 species were shouting and screaming and flashing colors in panic. Yoonji walked through them calmly, her boots clicking on the crystal floor. She climbed the steps to the center platform, the same place where Unipark had stood 40 years before. Everyone went quiet when she raised her hand. "I was not here when you made your judgment. I was at the memorial wall on Earth touching the names of my mother and father. They died 8 years before the Exile, killed by Concord ships over Kepler. Your people called it quarantine work." She stopped, letting her words sink in. "I've waited my whole adult life for this moment. I trained and planned and dreamed of standing here before you. And I want you to understand something very clearly." Her voice rose, filling the room. "I am not here for revenge. I could destroy this world with one order. I could burn every Concord station into dust. I have the power to end your whole way of life in a few days. But I will not do it. Because that would make us exactly what you said we were." High Arbiter Soren was brought forward. His silver shell was dim with fear. He looked up at this human woman who used to be a young officer and was now the leader of the strongest fleet in all of history. "What do you want?" he asked. Yoonji looked down at him. Her eyes held no hate, only strong purpose. "We want you to see us as equals. We want the right to live among the stars without asking permission from those who fear us. And we want you to say you are sorry. Not for the Exile. We stopped caring about that long ago. Say sorry for the millions who died before we could escape. For my mother and father and all the others who never got to see what we became, Soren was shaking. And if we say no, then we will leave. We will go back to our homes in the void, where we built something greater than anything you can imagine. We will keep growing and getting better, beyond your borders, beyond your control. And someday, maybe in 1,000 years, maybe in 10,000, we will come back again. By then, we will be so far ahead of you that this talk will seem like a memory of children playing. The choice is yours. But know this, we are not going away. We will never go away. You had your chance to end us, and you failed. Now you must live with us. The only question is whether you want us as enemies or as equals. The room was silent. Every being there understood the truth. Humanity could not be stopped. Humanity could not be controlled. The only choice was to accept them. High Arbiter, Soren lowered his head. We will talk about your terms, he said quietly. Yanji nodded and turned to leave. As she walked out of the room, she let herself smile just a little. After 40 years of waiting, humanity had finally come home. The talks lasted 3 months. People from humanity and the Concord met at a station in space between Theron Prime and the Outer Void. There were arguments and disagreements and times when it seemed like everything would fall apart. But in the end, both sides knew that peace was the only way forward. The agreement was signed on the exact same day as the exile sentence. 50 years later to the day, the words were written in every language of the Concord and in every human tongue. Screens showed it across the galaxy. People read it in meeting halls and living rooms and ships, floating in the darkness between stars. The new agreement changed everything. Humanity became a full member of the Galactic Concord. Not as a young species learning from older ones, but as equals with full voting power and full protection under the rules. The Outer Void lands were named as human space forever. The old exile sentence was officially removed, erased from all records as if it had never happened. But the biggest change was to the Concord itself. The old system where older species ruled over younger ones was ended. No longer could one group decide what happened to another. In its place came a true joining of equals, where every voice mattered and every species could grow at its own speed. President Hajin Kwan stood for humanity at the signing event. She was 42 years old, born on Space Home 7 in the middle of the Outer Void. She had never seen the blue sky of Earth or felt real rain on her face. Her whole life had been lived among the stars, in the world that humans had built from nothing. She stood at the center of the assembly of voices, looking out at beings from more than 100 species. Many of them had voted for humanity's exile 50 years ago. Now they watched with a mix of fear and respect as this young woman from the void spoke to them. 50 years ago you looked at humanity and saw danger, Hajin said. Her voice was calm and clear, reaching every part of the huge room. You saw our history of war and called us violent. You saw how fast we grew and called us dangerous. You saw that we would not bow and called us too proud. Based on these ideas, you sent us to die in the darkness past the edge of the galaxy. She stopped, letting the memory of that wrong hang in the air. You were right about one thing. We are dangerous. Not because we like to destroy things, but because we do not accept limits. When you told us we could not live in the void, we built worlds there. When you told us we could not come back, we built a fleet that could not be stopped. When you told us we had no place in the stars, we made a place better than anything you had ever seen. Her face softened a little. But we are not here to punish you for being afraid. We are here to offer something better. The old Concord was built on control. The strong ruled the weak. The old taught the young what to think. This kept peace, but it also kept species trapped, never allowed to become all they could be. We offer a different way. She pointed at the agreement floating in the air before her. This new agreement promises freedom. Every species will be allowed to grow at its own speed, to find its own path, to reach for whatever future it wants. There will be no more exile. There will be no more judgment. There will only be working together and treating each other with respect. Jean looked straight at High Arbiter Soren, who sat in the front row. His silver shell had been cleaned for the event, but he looked tired and beaten. We could have destroyed you, she said softly. We have the power. Some of our people wanted it. They remembered the millions killed by Concord ships. They remembered families torn apart and worlds burned. They wanted justice. She shook her head. But justice is not the same as revenge. True justice means building a future where such wrongs can never happen again. That is what we offer today. Not punishment, but a new start. On Space Home 1, now called New Earth, old Admiral Yoon Ji-yoon watched the event from her home. She was 75 years old, her body tired, but her mind still sharp. The walls of her home were covered with pictures of her parents, her old friends, the crews she had led over many decades. A glowing display showed the memorial wall that still stood on Earth. It had been updated to include everyone lost during the Exodus. Millions of names carved in stone that would last forever. Her granddaughter Soyeon sat next to her. The girl was 12 years old, with bright eyes and endless questions. She had been born on New Earth and had never known anything but the world her grandparents had built. Grandmother, Soyeon asked, watching President Ha-jin speak on the screen, were you ever scared? When they sent us away into the dark. Yeonji smiled and took the girl's hand. No, she said after thinking for a moment. I was never scared. I was angry. So angry, I could not think straight. I wanted to hurt them, to make them pay for what they did to my mother and father, to everyone they killed. She held Soyeon's hand gently. But anger is not the same as fear. Fear makes you want to run away or hide. Anger makes you want to fight. And fighting, when done the right way, can change everything. Did we change everything? Yoonji looked at the screen, where President Ha-jin was putting her mark on the agreement. All around her, beings from 100 species were clapping. The old ways were dying, and something new was being born. Yes, Yoonji said. We changed everything. They thought exile would finish us. Instead, it made us stronger. They thought darkness would break us. Instead, we learned to shine brighter than any star. They thought fear would control us. Instead, we taught them that a galaxy of equals has nothing to fear. Outside the window, 1,000 human ships drifted past. Some were heading toward new places that the agreement had opened up. Others were going back to the void, to the space homes that had become family over 50 years. And some were traveling to Earth to walk on the ground that humanity had left behind so long ago. Soyeon watched the ships with wonder in her eyes. Where are they all going? Everywhere, Yeonji replied. That is what we do. We go everywhere. We explore and build and grow. We never stop moving forward. She thought about her parents. She thought about Captain Do-yeon, who had died 10 years ago. She thought about Admiral Yuna, who had lived just long enough to see the agreement signed before finally letting go. They had all given up so much. They had all believed so strongly, and they had been proven right. The exile is over, Yeonji said, more to herself than to Soyeon. But the exodus never ended. It never will. Because we are humanity, we do not stop. We do not settle down. We do not accept that anything is impossible. She looked at her granddaughter, seeing in her young face the future of all humanity, and we never, ever forget. The stars burned bright outside the window. Somewhere among them, humanity was building new worlds, making new discoveries, reaching for new places. The verdict had been exile. The answer had been an unstoppable exodus that changed the galaxy forever. And this was only the beginning.